It was August of 1914, and the vastly outnumbered British soldiers prepared to do battle with the German army. And yet, despite the odds, when the smoke cleared, the British came out on top. Soon after, stories of angels and ghostly archers began to circulate around the British homeland. And this is the story of the Angel of Mons. And before we get started, please do subscribe because it does help out the channel a lot. And stick around to the end because I have a very, very special announcement about an upcoming project, and you're going to want to hear it. And now, with all that said, let's get into it. The Battle of Mons itself was one of the first major engagements of the British in World War I. The battle took place on the border of France and consisted of small sects of Allied soldiers attempting to push back a much larger German invading force. However, as mentioned earlier, the British forces were vastly outnumbered and could only hold off the much more prepared German forces for so long. Eventually, the final engagement began, and despite all the odds, the British forces prevailed. The German army was temporarily pushed back, and while of course they would eventually break through, it did buy the Allies at least a little bit of time. Now, a few months after this battle, in September of 1914, an author by the name of Arthur Llewellyn Jones would publish his short story titled The Bowman in his local newspaper. The story was supposedly inspired by the accounts he had heard from people that were present at the Battle of Mons. The story itself described a young soldier calling on the St. George to help them. And the story claims that after this happened, phantom archers from the Battle of Agincourt appeared and began driving back the German offensive. The Battle of Agincourt was an English victory in the 100 Years' War in which the vastly outnumbered English forces were able to push back the French army. This in turn boosted English morale and led to the collapse of the French army at the time. Now, of course, we all know that Jones wrote the story as fiction, but it was not published that way. The Evening News published the same story under a different name, causing many people to question the validity of it and ask for sources. And like I said earlier, while many people were skeptical, of course there were a fair amount of people that believed this to be an accurate telling of the events that happened. This went on for several months until eventually Jones published his story, The Bowman and Other Legends of War, to which this was the introduction. It seemed that my light fiction had been accepted by the congregation of this particular church as the solidest of facts, and it was then that it began to dawn on me that if I had failed in the art of letters, I had succeeded unwittingly in the art of deceit. This happened, I should think, sometime in April, and the snowball of rumor that was then set rolling has been rolling ever since, growing bigger and bigger until it is now swollen to a monstrous size. So, of course, with the story gaining more popularity, there were many other versions and re-releases of the story published at that time that had made small changes to the original that was written by Jones. Some of these even began to include evidence that they believed would make the story more believable. For example, one author even went as far as to say that several of the dead Germans had been found with arrow wounds. Another even supposedly had a quote saying that the men who were there could see a row of shining beings standing between the two armies. And finally, on April 24th of 1915, the story that we know today as the Angel of Mons was published. The story told of a cloud falling over the battlefield and a supernatural force miraculously intervening and saving the British from impending doom. And many use this account to argue that the divine forces at play were on the side of the Allies during this war. So with all these fictional accounts and made-up stories, what actually happened at the Battle of Mons? Well, the only actual account from the Battle of Mons that even mentions anything supernatural is several of the soldiers mentioned seeing these phantom cavalrymen during their retreat, but this happened during the retreat, of course, and many of the soldiers were hungry, dehydrated, sleep-deprived, and so it's more likely than not that these were just hallucinations more than anything. So now, what do I think? Well, I believe that it's a fun story, of course. However, I do not believe that it is true, especially since the author of the original has very clearly stated that it is fiction, but some people still do believe it to this day, and they claim to have evidence that corroborates that. But I have not seen any that has convinced me otherwise. And of course, I always have an open mind about these things, but from everything that I researched and could see, It did not happen, unfortunately. As cool as that would be, I don't think it happened. So now, for those of you that stuck around this long, you get to hear the special announcement that I have, and that is, I would like to announce my first series that I'll be doing, and it will be on the Mandela catalog. So I will be going piece by piece, breaking down different aspects of the story. I'm very excited for it. I do not have a timeline for this because I really want to do my best to get Alex Kister's permission to make the series. For those of you who don't know who Alex is, he's the man behind the Mandela catalog, and if you have not watched that, it is one of the most phenomenal series that exist on YouTube. If you're into horror, it is phenomenal, and that's why I want to do a series on it to sort of break down the different aspects and help some people make sense of it, because it's really cool. And so again, I don't have a timeline, but if I can get in touch with Alex and get his permission, I hope to get it done as soon as possible, although I will not be rushing it because I really do want to do it right. I'm very excited. And now that being said, that is going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Next video will be out hopefully by Tuesday. If not Monday, I may release this one early, but it's looking more like Tuesday at the moment, so we'll see how it goes. And yeah, that's about all I have for you. Thank you guys so much for watching again, and that's going to do it. See you in the next one. Bye.